This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.
Now, on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT, HD, WOGL, HD3, Philadelphia. Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
If we don't move in our own direction, we're going to become extinct. In fact, in some cases, we're close to being extinct right now.
Presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries, and powered by the law offices of Pond, Lehocky, Stern, Giordano. Talk, listen, and speak to the region's most influential leaders. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. A good Saturday evening, everybody, and welcome in this 4th of July weekend, and welcome in to Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We bring you in with a very, very special, very dynamic show, J-Doc, for the holiday weekend. It's 4th of July. We're in the city of Independence. This is what it's all about, and it's great to be here on a Saturday night.
That's right, Krause. It is awesome to be here on this 4th of July weekend. And hey, listen, our listeners are going to listen in and say, this is the labor show. This is the Republican hour. They're going to be like, did I tune into the right show at this time? But we're an equal opportunity platform, and that's what labor is all about. And so we're going to have a great show.
I know we always begin the broadcast. We always begin Saturday night with PhillyLabor, as many of our listeners now have come accustomed to, with setting our table. We begin and we set our table, and we break bread. And I've got a real good treat for you, J-Doc, with your birthday coming up on July 4th, which is Tuesday. I'm going to send you down to the Rusty Nail in Cape May. Monday the 3rd, Monday afternoon, Chef Jimmy does an unbelievable pig roast right down at the Rusty Nail on Beach Avenue in Cape May. I know you love Cape May.
Listen, I want to leave right now, but let me just say this. You only turn 25 one time, Krause, and it's an exciting day for me, and so I'm looking forward to hitting the Rusty Nail.
Well, you're going to enjoy it, and I'll have Chef Jimmy personally come over and say hello to you, but
awesome.
Do enjoy it, and a happy birthday.
Thank you,
as the nation celebrates the birthday on July 4th. We thank everybody for tuning in to Saturday Night Live here on PhillyLabor. As J-Doc mentioned, we've got a great show lined up. We welcome into our big show, into the studio, Beth Grossman, who is the Republican candidate for the district attorney's office, and she's in the big chair. Hello, Beth. How are you?
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Nice to have you here as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Beth. Certainly, in the fall, Philadelphia voters are going to vote for their district attorney in the city of Philadelphia. And tell our listeners who Beth Grossman is and why they should vote for you.
Well, first of all, I am a fourth-generation Philadelphian. So my parents came, grandparents, great-grandparents, by way of South Philadelphia, Strawberry Mansion, Oxford Circle in the Great Northeast. My dad owned candy stores on Kensington Avenue and at 5th and Olney.
All right.
My mom was a public school teacher. And as for me, Penn State graduate, Temple Law graduate, and I spent 21 and a half years in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. I was hired by Lynn Abraham, and I started in September of 1993. And I have an incredible prosecutorial background. I served in every division of that office, trials, juvenile, investigations, law, narcotics. You name it, I did it. I know how that office should be run, and I know how it should not. And I also proudly spent 1 year as chief of staff at the Department of Licensing and Inspection. So I learned a lot about the trades and construction.
All right, so you got some background here, Joe.
Beth, let me ask you, we come on after a week of incredible activity in the city of Philadelphia. Seth Williams pleads in court. You get the big endorsement from the FOP. I don't know which one you want to tackle first, but I want to get you to react, if you will, first on Seth and then on the FOP endorsement.
Certainly, with regard to Seth Williams pleading, I just simply have to say that it is really one of the, if not the most saddest day in the history of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, when, the highest elected law enforcement official of Philadelphia pleads guilty to criminal charges when he is the one who is tasked with upholding and enforcing the laws of the Commonwealth. So it's sad for everyone, the public, the men and women who go in and fight the good fight every day in Philadelphia. It makes me sad. And for victims and survivors of crime.
Beth Grossman is our live guest here on Saturday Night Live in PhillyLabor, and on the FOP endorsement. I know J-Doc prepared a lot of conversation about that. We have McNesby, John McNesby coming up in the B block, so we're going to bring him into the conversation as well. But give me a short soundbite on what that must have been like. I think it was Tuesday night of this past week. Pretty special night for you, I would think.
Very special night. I am proud and honored to have received the endorsement of the Philadelphia FOP, the Lodge 5. It means a great deal. Look, I've worked with these men and women for over 2 decades. We've tried cases, we've won cases, we've lost cases. And look, and I've mourned for those officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. So it means a great deal to me, because without the police department, DA's office can't do its job.
Now, you're running for district attorney. You've been, you were an ADA for 21 years.
Yes.
Why are you running for actually, what influenced you to run for the big office?
Really, what influenced me is, first of all, how much I love Philadelphia. You know, this city is very special to me. I love its people. And then when Seth, there was issues with Seth, and I knew an indictment maybe was going to come, and I didn't like how things were being run, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to run against him. That office needs to be run with integrity. You need to respect the public's trust and honor that trust, and I have the experience to do that. And
and having said that, because obviously this has been a difficult time for the DA's office in Philadelphia, how important is integrity to the office of the DA?
Listen, integrity is the most important thing that needs to be stressed and emphasized in that office, from the district attorney, him or herself, as well as through everybody, from the assistant district attorneys there to police personnel to staff. Because when you are tasked with trying people, addressing issues that deal with liberty and loss of life and important things, you better operate that office with integrity and ethics.
Now, I'm assuming you still have relationships in the office, and how has morale been, since all this stuff has hit the fan?
Let me tell you, the folks there, former colleagues who I'm so proud of, have really, it's hard. Morale is down. I mean, when an office loses credibility, when you go in and fight the good fight every day and you have to go back and face, professional embarrassment, it's really hard. But you know what? I commend them. They keep doing their jobs, and I'm proud of them.
Let me take you, Beth, down a road, if you will. Just want to get you to comment. Larry Krasner was on the show here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. I'm going to play 2 cuts. I'm going to play one, and then I want to have you react to that, and then we'll play a second and have you react to that as well. Here's cut 1 from Larry Krasner.
There are things that you can do quickly. You can fairly quickly stop seeking death penalty. You can fairly quickly move in the direction against mass incarceration. But in any situation where there is cultural change, you need to make sure that the people who are in supervisory positions share your vision, share your ethics, share your values, because, in an office of 600 people with 300 attorneys, it's not as if the district attorney can be in everybody's files and in everybody's office all the time.
Well, I mean, to a degree, you have to have a good culture of integrity and ethics and transparency, and that's something that I will certainly bring to the DA's office. I agree with that. But the backbone, the function of a district attorney's office is to prosecute. And Larry, who has spent his entire career defending those accused of crime, as well as suing the police department well over 75 times since the early 90s, has a different perspective. And I don't think he realizes that that is what the backbone of the job is to prosecute.
Do you think, before I run this second bite, just a quick short question, do you think it's going to be very difficult for the next DA based on Seth Williams?
I think it will take some time to regain the public's trust of that office, to understand that you now have a new DA who has integrity, who will have to work hard to rebuild the credibility of that office. But it's time for change. And if elected, let me tell you something, that's something that I welcome. Beth
Grossman joining us here in the studio. Here's the second soundbite. This was J-Doc going back and forth with Larry Krasner on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor.
They're not liars. They're not cheats. They're not people who are on the make and trying to make money on the side in ways that are improper. And unfortunately, some of the revelations about Seth Williams are very troubling, and they cause all of them to feel like they have been painted with his brush.
the dynamic there is everybody in the office.
And I do agree with that. And it's part and parcel. Let me tell you something real quickly. Just sort of that thing about lining pockets and stuff like that. I was a Democrat till 2013, and I switched to become a Republican because I got tired of too much Democratic public official corruption by our elected leaders, whether it's judges, state reps, attorney general, or DA. And I decided, you know what? I'm a taxpayer, I'm a Philadelphian, and I'm a proud public servant, and this isn't working for me. So I kind of agree with that. And it's time to bring integrity and a little bit more different political balance to the DA's office. But I will say it is the office, because of what it does, should be nonpartisan. Really, it doesn't matter, because crime doesn't care what political party you belong to, and nor should a DA.
Beth Grossman joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, along with J-Doc. I'm Krause. We continue on this holiday weekend. We ask you to pay attention to the American flag as you roll through your holiday weekend. Look for J-Doc at the Rusty Nail on Monday, and we wish him a happy birthday as well. When we come back, John McNesby will join us in the B Block, and we'll continue our conversation with Beth. Back in a moment.
Chris to go.
Why aren't you outraged and offended at this?
Weekday mornings, 5:30 to 9. Talk Radio 1210, WPHT.
Some of the fireworks that are going to go off this weekend around the Delaware Valley and over the Delaware River and down in South Jersey as we welcome you into this 4th of July edition of Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness.
So we're talking to Beth Grossman, and the candidate for DA, and Beth, during difficult times that the DA's office is going through, how do you restore dignity and morale and camaraderie to the DA's office, who's been beat up pretty bad over these last several months?
I mean, I think you have to go in and establish, or I will establish, that, integrity and leadership comes from the top down. And that if you are the district attorney, you are essentially the DA's office. And so I will lead by example, make sure they understand that, make sure that they understand, those men and women who work there every day, that I have their back. I am here to help them to restore their morale, the office's reputation and credibility, by supporting them, by listening to them. What suggestions do you have to help improve this? Because they've been through, I haven't been there in 2 years, and they've been through the worst of it. And I want to hear from them. What can we do? Because we need to work together as a team.
Exactly. And speaking of support, I'm ecstatic to have on FOP Lodge 5 President John McNesby. He represents our police force here in Philadelphia. He's one of the most effective labor leaders in our region on behalf of his members. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Well, thank you. How's everybody doing?
Everybody's great, man, and we appreciate you calling in. And so we have Beth Grossman, candidate for DA, here in the studio. And this past week, the FOP unanimously endorsed Beth for DA. Tell us about the endorsement and what were the determining factors and why your members unanimously endorsed her.
Well, pretty much it comes down to experience. And Beth has had a great established career within the district attorney's office. She knows many of our members. She's worked with them closely on many cases, and it's name recognition there. But on the flip side, she's going against a candidate who has his entire career been opposed to police on the other side of the table as not only a defense attorney, because there's hundreds of defense attorneys in the city, but he actively was against the police officer, sued them admittedly by his own words over 75 times. And I'm not saying that our officers are out there and 100% in the right all the time, but there's a way to do things, and there was always some toxic relationship between Krasner and the officers, and I think him coming in, and I give him credit. We did meet with Congressman Brady, and he had hoped to get the endorsement, which we kind of knew was not going to happen, and explained that to him, but he still wanted to talk to our members anyhow, and the organization wouldn't have benefited had we had not heard his side. So we brought him in, and to his credit, he gave his
he gave his pitch, and unfortunately for him, it didn't work well. It was unanimously against him.
What could he, John? What could he possibly say?
Well, I mean, he wanted to tell about his past, and he, he doesn't like bad cops, and I don't think anybody does. I know Beth doesn't. Beth is going to have to arrest police officers if she's elected or when she's elected. So, I mean, we knew that. He's some of the things that really struck home with our members is that he is against the death penalty, and especially in not just for cases with officers killed in the line of duty, which we wholeheartedly support the death penalty, but for such heinous crimes against kids or the community, he would still oppose it. That and the bill that's currently pending in Harrisburg regarding the releasing of officers' names when they're involved in a shooting. And we just had one the other day where the officer unfortunately had to take a life, and our guys don't go to work every day looking to take a life. They look to protect the community. But on the other hand, this guy was he was shot by the officer. He was killed, and now the officer has to have a car at his house, his car at his kid's daycare, police car at his mother-in-law's house because of death threats. So that's what we're asking. I mean, for a little help with that. He was against that, so that didn't ring too well with our members either. But he answered a half dozen questions, and our officers that were in attendance, there was over 300, were respectful, and then the motion was put on the floor and overwhelmingly passed.
Well, John, I just want to thank you, the executive board, and all the members of FOP for this, in honor of this endorsement. And, I support law enforcement. The job that men and women do day in and day out is a tough one. As I said in my speech during my tenure in the DA's office, I mourn the loss of, as you all did, of 23 officers. And that's a large amount of officers to lose their lives. And if elected DA, I look forward to working with and having a good working relationship with the police department because, as I said earlier, we can't function without them. Right.
And, I mean, that's all we asked for. I mean, we, in 2009, we took a lot of heat. We did endorse, Seth Williams at that time. And, he started off okay, and then it was like an avalanche after that. I mean, it just got worse and worse, and there was no open dialogue, which is what you need. Whether we're going to like the decision or not, all we need is a fair shot at the table. It seemed like we weren't getting that, and all our calls were going on deaf ears. And unfortunately, now I'm hearing that he just pled guilty this morning, so was taken into custody. So it's a sad day for him and his family, but you don't wish that on anybody. But we're looking forward to working with you, Beth, in January and reestablishing those open lines of communication.
Absolutely.
Well, John, how important is it? And it sounds like you touched on this, but how important is it for the Philadelphia Police to have a good relationship and be on the same page with the DA and the District Attorney's office? You're doing the same job, basically.
Well, I mean, listen, it's very important because you're working hand in hand. He did a lot of good things with breaking down the DA's office in the certain areas of the city, and but there was also a cloud over the detective divisions where you had to pretty much have an act of Congress to have somebody charged with a crime. I mean, there was cut and dry cases that were sent over to charging that were never they just went on the wayside. And he did not prosecute or sent the word down not to charge. So it's important, and it's very important because we need to get there's a lot of work to be done with a lot less officers, a lot less resources in the district attorney's office, but crime doesn't stop. And although there's some good programs out there for people, first-time offenders, there's obviously probation. You have a number of drug programs, but there is times when you commit a crime that you have to go to jail, and it just seemed like that stopped for quite some time in the last few years.
John McNesby joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. John, thanks for taking a moment to call into the big show. Thank you, sir.
Well, we appreciate it. Take care and have a great weekend.
All right, good stuff. That's John McNesby joining us here with J. Duck. I'm Krause, Beth Grossman in the studio on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We'll continue our conversation as we roll on a Saturday night. Back here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. A holiday weekend from the city where independence was born, and we send a good salute and a good cheer out to all of those serving in our military. Welcome in, everybody, to Saturday Night Live. Thanks very much for listening to the big show tonight. Along with J. Doc, I'm Krause. Beth Grossman, who is the Republican candidate for the District Attorney's Office, is in the studio. And we go to the phones with Val DiGiorgio joining us. He is the chairman of the state Republican Party, and he joins us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor. Val, thanks very much for calling in, sir. Good evening. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Nice
to be here.
Yep, nice to have you here, Val. Let me get you to comment quickly. We have Beth Grossman in the studio, and she is the Republican candidate in a Democratic city, and she's got a monumental mountain in front of her, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
Well, Beth's, as you could see from her resume, and I'm sure she's talked to you about it, and very, very well suited and qualified for the position to DA. She's got a great relationship with law enforcement. They respect her, as evidenced by the FOP endorsement, unanimous, by the way, the other day. And she's a great candidate, and I think she's going to make a great DA. And if you're interested in keeping Philadelphia city streets safe, and someone who's going to have the back of law enforcement, she's your candidate.
No, Val. It's Joe Doherty, and we want to welcome you to the show. And we just came off of a presidential election where we saw both Republican and Democrat voters throughout our country bucking the status quo. Republicans selecting Donald Trump over standard candidates, and Democrats selecting Donald Trump over their Democratic candidates. Do you think? We live in a largely Democratic city here. That during this particular time, that's a candidate like Beth Grossman can have that same effect?
I think Beth can, and especially when she's running against someone that's really so far left. And forgive me for being partisan here, but it's my job. I'm the Republican chairman. The emblematic of what's going on in the Democratic Party across the country. A party that's really moved very, very far to the left, as evidenced by the fact locally that they've nominated an anti-cop, anti-law enforcement lawyer who's sued police 75 times, who's represented very, very left-wing groups. And now you have an issue where, Philadelphia could potentially become Chicago. And Chicago, we see what's happening with the murder rate there. Every year it gets higher and higher. You have a climate there where law enforcement sometimes doesn't want to stick their neck out because they may not have a prosecutor who's got their back. And, Larry Krasner has indicated that he's not always going to take, not that he should, but always take the side of, but he's going to look with a jaundiced eye toward what law enforcement is saying. And he's not likely to give much more credibility to law enforcement than he is the criminal. And that's a problem. And you won't have that problem with Beth Grossman. She's going to be fair, but she's going to have law enforcement's back, and that's important.
No, thank you so much, Chairman, for your kind words. It means the world, and I agree with you because if police officers are going to be afraid that they are going to be prosecuted by the sitting district attorney because of something they may do inadvertently wrong while doing their job, what they're tasked with every day, they're not going to want to do anything. They're just going to keep driving and not look the other way when their job is to reach out and protect the public. And that's, like you said, it's going to result in a spike in crime. I don't want us to be Baltimore. I don't want us to be Chicago. And let's not forget that Mr. Soros has been backed Larry has been backed by George Soros to the tune of $1.7 million. And as I've been saying before, there's no such thing as a free lunch, okay? What's the quid pro quo there? I don't know, but it's disturbing.
Well, my thought is, we still have an election in front of us and the confidence of the people. When you look at the presidential election, and I say that because, when you talk about, Democrats, working people jumping over, okay, and you have Republicans, not voting and electing the standard candidates. The question is, do Americans, Philadelphians, Pennsylvanians have confidence in the political system? I mean, what did we learn from that? What did we learn from that? From the presidential election that I think we learned that there's gridlock in America, and what can we do to make sure that Pennsylvanians see that that's going to stop here?
Well, look, was widespread agreement people on both sides, as evidenced by the numbers on Election Day, that we've got a big problem in Washington, D.C., and it's not a problem of any one particular party. It's a problem with a corrupt system in Washington, and where it's run by bureaucrats and special interests on both sides, instead of having accountability. So Donald Trump went in there, and I could tell you that may not have happened as much in southeastern Pennsylvania, but to look at the rest of Pennsylvania, where he got significant Democrat Party votes, especially from folks in trades and all over the state, who were interested in having a president who was going to put the American worker first. And whether you like Donald Trump's style or his tweets, one thing has been clear, that for the first time in a long, long time, we've got an American president who puts the American worker, American interest, and American interest overseas first. And he does that every day, and he's keeping with his promises. And I think that, look, if we can get a tax reform bill done that creates jobs, and we can get an infrastructure bill that creates jobs and builds our roads and our ports and our bridges, and then pivot to some other things where the president can reach across the aisle, he has a chance to fundamentally remake American politics. And you said it earlier, not all Republicans were for him initially. And this president, to some extent, can transcend party lines and remake American politics. So we just need him to be a uniter and get some things done. Most importantly for your listeners is to create jobs.
Well, the interesting thing was he definitely turned Democrats upstate. He didn't do obviously as well in the city. So the challenge here for any Republican in this city of Philadelphia is, regardless of the platform, how do you convince people that whether you're Republican, independent, or whatever, that you're the candidate that is right for the job?
And Beth, that's your biggest challenge.
Well, sure, but I think what happens on your block, in your neighborhood, people see what affects them the most every day, and they pay attention to that often at times as opposed to big national issues. And I just ask all people, independents, Democrats, Republican, to take a look at what I'm about and let me earn your vote, because I am the best qualified candidate to become district attorney of Philadelphia, because this is about your public safety and quality of life in every neighborhood of Philadelphia. And as I said earlier, crime doesn't care what political party you are, and a DA should not. And I'm that person. This is about keeping everybody safe, and I am committed to doing that, not to conduct a grand social experiment at the behest of George Soros. What I have said repeatedly is that we have one of the finest public defender's offices in the country. We do not need two. The DA's office is to enforce the law fairly, ethically, and justly, and to make sure that those who commit violent, horrible crimes are sentenced accordingly. And I'm that person who's willing to do that.
Well said. Val DiGiorgio, the chairman of the state Republican Party, joining us on this holiday weekend as we broadcast from the city where independence was born. Val, we wish you a good, peaceful, restful holiday weekend during the 4th of July.
Yeah, and happy 4th to you and all your listeners. Enjoy the holiday.
Thank you, Val.
All right, good.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff from Val DiGiorgio as he joins us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. J. Doc, Beth, before we go to break, we got about a minute and a half here. Let me get you to weigh in, on what Val was alluding to and what you had referenced to, and J. Doc, you mentioned it as well. You have to move people to get them to vote for you, and that sounds not easy, but that's one process. Executing it is the other.
Well, I think, look, people have to be informed, educated, civic consumers, as they call them. And I said, this is an extraordinary race. You have a 20-year veteran of the DA's office who's a prosecutor and a candidate who is an extreme left who really wants to decarcerate people, who has said that. And people, this is about your public safety every day, about how police officers operate, about being able to sit safely on your porch, have your kids play outside, have your neighbors, neighborhood improved. And I'm asking people to take a good, hard look at who is the best candidate. And that's me. And as I said again, DA's office doesn't matter. It should be nonpartisan.
Yeah, and that's a good point. But, we're in the city of Philadelphia, and the DA's office, obviously it's Republican and Democrat. Those are the two major parties voting for individuals. And it's something that, unless when you vote, you should vote for the candidate that is right for you.
Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the big show. We're visiting with Beth Grossman, who's live in the studio. We'll roll on when we come back after the break.
The Democrat Party has been decimated because of Barack Obama. What greater impact could he have had?
Weekdays noon till 3 on Talk Radio 1210.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly
Saturday Night Live and PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Don't forget, coming up at 8 o'clock, the Dan Loney Show. Dan will take you into the night, 8 to 11, following Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries. Back to the phones we go. Michael Meehan is joining us. Michael is the chairman of the Republican City Committee, and he joins us here on the hotline. Michael, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you for calling.
Michael, it's J. Doc. How do you strategize for a candidate like Beth Grossman, who's running for DA in Philadelphia, a city that's overwhelmingly Democrat?
Well, in a typical year, you'd be exactly right. Although I think that this is an atypical year, okay, in that her opposition is hardly a law and order type person, and the office they're running for is the chief law enforcement agent for the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking during the break how, the district attorney's office in many ways shouldn't even be a Democrat and Republican type of an issue. You're talking about somebody, supporting somebody or voting for somebody who's going to maintain law and order in the city of Philadelphia.
That makes it, obligations to anybody, but since inception, it's always been an elected office. I don't know how else you'd change it, okay, because although they're a city office, a lot of their powers come from state law.
Now, the interesting thing, we were talking to Val DiGiorgio in the previous segment, and we talked about the presidential election. We saw a lot of middle and working class Americans crossing party lines. Do you think it's possible in this upcoming election?
Oh, I think it's very much possible because crime affects everybody. Okay, and I would think that people in Philadelphia who haven't been touched by crime are becoming fewer and fewer. Okay, and I'm not just simply talking about having your car broken into. So.
Now, I agree with the chairman on that. People really have to take a look because crime can affect anybody. And again, as I can't say it enough, is you have to take a look and vote for who is the best candidate, which is me, who is going to be the best job to do what is required of the district attorney.
But the question is, how do you convince Democrats, many are just going to pull the lever straight D, that it's more than just a political situation, that it's in their best interest. It should be common sense from where you're coming and where Michael's coming and Val, but that's obviously not the way it's always done. And in the city of Philadelphia with the presidential election, that wasn't the case. They didn't jump party lines.
Well, what I will tell you is, interestingly, is the position of district attorney is the one position in Philadelphia where lightning has struck for Republicans. You had Arlen Specter, you had former Pennsylvania Chief Justice Ron Castile, and hopefully it'll be me, because I think people in that election for that position take a look and really say, you know what, crime is something that can affect me or my family. And people are aware of that. They read the papers, they see, and it's also incumbent upon me to get out and meet as many people as possible, which I have been doing. And I have to tell you, people are willing to listen to me, to give me a chance. And I have had Democrats and independents both say to me, you know what? You've convinced me. I'm going to cross party lines. I'm going to vote for you in November.
Michael, you say what?
No sooner than the election was over, the primary, I had longtime Democrats stopping me on the street and in my office who are lifelong Democrats saying that there was no way they could vote for Larry Krasner. To me, we're starting off the right thing. And yes, we're going to have to be everywhere between now and November.
Is there any debates planned?
I imagine there will be a whole bunch come fall.
All right. Well, listen, Michael, we really appreciate you calling in and giving us your time on this 4th of July weekend. Have a great weekend, and we thank you.
You do have the same. Thank you.
That's Michael Meehan, the chair of the Republican City Committee, joining us here on Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Just a few moments before we get to the closure of the show. It goes so quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Beth, I did want to get you to react to earlier in the week the endorsement by the FOP in some kind of a strange, eerie, cool way. It must have been just an unbelievable feeling for you to receive that big endorsement.
You know, it really was. And it really makes me think back upon my entire career, you know, as a prosecutor. And, you know, I don't know how I'm going to come out of this in the election, hopefully victorious, of course. But you know what? I would not have changed that career, those 21 and a half years, for everything. And being able to work with some of the finest law enforcement personnel to seek justice for people, by people who have been really harmed and hurt, or be able to, you know, close down drug houses or nuisance bars or violence bars and change, you know, the tenor of a neighborhood, all doing that with law enforcement. It was an incredible honor. It really was. And it's just something that means a great deal to me.
Yeah. On a week where obviously the DA's office has taken a massive hit, certainly, you know, we got a lot of things coming up. We got a lot of good things coming up. Hopefully there'll be a debate and everybody will get their chance, and Philadelphians will be able to vote for the candidate that works for them.
I hope so.
Beth, let me, before we say goodbye to you, and then J-Doc, I'm going to come back to you just for a quick recap, because you were very energized today, by the way. I thought you did a great job, so I will come back to you. But significant difference, Beth, between you and Larry.
I care about enforcing the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and seeking justice for victims of crime. That is the role of the DA's office, to do it ethically, appropriately, and to make sure that those who really cause people to lose their lives or harm them or traumatize them are properly punished.
Will you struggle or challenge with this whole sanctuary city conversation?
Look, my view is this. For those who are convicted of violent crimes and are here illegally, they should not be here. They should be removed from this country. So, you know, the DA's office does not enforce ICE regulations. That's not what we do. But issues of those who have, you know, judicial or federal warrants to deport people and have a 48-hour hold, I have no problem with that, because why do I want somebody who is a violent, proven, convicted individual to go back to what is probably a marginalized community and to continue to victimize people? That makes no sense to me. Not at all. Nobody should be a victim of crime.
Beth Grossman, the Republican candidate for District Attorney's Office. J-Duck, I come to you. I'll give you 30 seconds to kind of put a wrap on the big show, a different show for Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor today.
Well, we talked about, you know, equal opportunity for everybody. That's what labor's all about. Certainly, we had Larry Krasner on the show, and I'm happy to have Beth Grossman on the show. And certainly, it's an emotional week for the District Attorney's Office, and it's always appropriate that we had this discussion, and then we look forward to the fall and letting it all iron itself out.
All right, good stuff. Special thanks again to Beth for coming into the studio. Well done.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you. You look good in the big chair behind the Talk Radio 1210 WPHT sign. Thanks to all of our listeners on this holiday weekend. It's Saturday Night Live with PhillyLabor, presented by Weinerman Pain and Wellness, serious doctors for serious injuries. On behalf of J-Doc, I'm Krause. We'll see you next time.
Seen that open space? I hope you're saving that for medical marijuana, because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that, and I just want to let you know, we're talking big numbers. We're talking, as you know, they're talking trillions, but we're talking mucho billions around here of unionized pension money. I haven't heard in 6 weeks one conversation about Russia yet. That's the reality. They come to me about jobs. They come to me a little bit about Obamacare, but they don't come to me about Russia. And with Philadelphia jumping out of the seams as a hospitality town, we need our transportation to be clean, efficient, safe, and on time.
This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.